Hi, my name's Simon from CramTheExam and welcome to week 9, day 1 of your 12-week preparation course for your FCE CAE or Matura Advanced exam. Today is Monday, which means we're going to be concentrating on writing. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the FCE and CAE Report questions, and I'm going to be taking an exam question, much as I have been doing for the last couple of weeks, breaking it down in terms of how I would plan for it, how I would structure it, and then how I would write it. But before we go any further, make sure that you've watched the introductory video to FCE and the CAE report. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, this will be week 4, day 1. Make sure you watch that video, find out what the report is all about, and check out those resources that that will help you get ready for the FCE report. Now, I've linked to everything in the video description below, the video that I've done previously and those resources, particularly the resources for rubenvalero.com. Check out those links and then come back to this video, and then everything will make a little bit more sense. So let's get started. Okay, so the first question we're going to have a look at is the FCE report question. Here is the question. You can get it from that link that you can see above my head or in the video description below. You have to download the zip package. This is from the Cambridge English site. So in that zip package, you'll get access to a complete FCE exam paper. So check out the writing question and then you'll find this question there. The report question is this. A group of British teachers is going to visit your college for 2 days. The aim of their trip is to learn about how technology is used in education in your country. You've been asked to write a report for the group leader. Your report should include information about how technology is used to teach different subjects, recommend which lessons the teacher should watch to see technology being used, and then go write your report. So straight away you should be thinking, what's the structure of the FCE report and how does this fit into the structure? Well, this is the structure for the FCE report. You've got a title, which is followed by an introduction in which we state the purpose of the report. Section 1 is the first idea in the task input. Section 2 is the second idea in a task input. Section 3, if it's needed, is the third idea in the task input, summary and suggestion. That should already be in your head before you do this question. All of the structures to all of the writing questions should already be in here. So when you do your writing question, it's half a second, no, maybe not half a second, but you know what I mean, a few seconds to write that down on a piece of paper to help you in the planning process. And we can see that the question neatly fits into the structure already. So the title is going to be something about technology in my school for visiting teachers. Introduction, state the purpose of the report. Well, that's covered here. So you've got to reword this. Don't copy the words because the examiner will know that you're copying the words. So you've got to rephrase this, paraphrase this, say this in a different way to explain why you're writing the report. First idea in the section 1, section 2, second idea. The first idea is this bit here, include information about how technology is used to teach different subjects. The second idea is to recommend which lessons the teacher should watch to see the technology being used. And then there isn't a need for a section 3 here, I don't think, although you could argue there might be. I'll leave that up to you. But for the time being, I'm going to remove that. And then we've got the summary and suggestion, which is based on what lessons and what technology you think the teachers should see. Now, remember that this is going to be semi-formal or formal. It's going to involve headings, and it has to involve bullet lists or numbered lists, because these are the things that are included in the format of a report. So already, with that structure in your mind, you should read that question, and mentally you should already have a good idea of how the report is going to be structured. So let's move it on to the next stage of planning and see what we can include in every element of the report. And so on the screen now, you should see what you should be coming up with, or something similar to this, within 5 minutes. Now, I know it looks scary, but it is very, very possible for you to do this, particularly if you know the structure and particularly if you have practiced. If you have not practiced creating plans, then of course this is going to take you longer, and of course it might be a little bit more nightmarish. But if you have practiced this, this should be second nature. Above my head you can see that I've included this grammar checklist, as I have done on my other videos. That's not to say that I want to include all of these areas of grammar, but I do want to be able to tick off a large proportion of them, because if I tick off a good number of those, then I know that I've got a wide range of grammar in my answer. So I've got the past here, present, future, simple continuous, perfect, perfect conditional, conditional 1, 2 and 3, relative pronouns, relative clauses, I've got the passive voice, and I've got the active voice. Now this is going to be a report, and so report means formal and formal means passive. Now outside the world of Cambridge exams, I don't agree with this at all, but for the point of view of Cambridge exams, formal equals passive. So you're going to have to include the passive structure in your answer. Okay, so let's have a look at how I've broken this down. The title, and remember, we've got to use headings. So I've got headings here, I've bolded them and I've underlined them. So the headings are part of my planning process. I haven't just thought of the headings after I've written everything. The headings create the structure, and then every paragraph underneath the heading relates to that heading, because that creates coherency, it creates sense in my writing, it creates logic in my writing. If I've got a heading and then I write something which has got nothing to do with the heading, then obviously that doesn't make sense. You're not communicating to the reader, or the reader will have difficulty in trying to understand what you're saying because it doesn't make sense, and so you're going to lose marks because of that. So I've got a title, Report for Visiting British Teachers, Re-Technology in Education, or Regarding Technology in Education. Okay, introduction can just be introduction. But in the introduction, of course, you'll have to explain what you're doing. So you've got to say something like, the aim or the purpose of this report is to ... Present simple forms, we're expressing facts and truths, in effect, what you're planning to do in this report. So present simple to start off with. And it's always recommended, if you have a look at Rubens Valero and on the other websites which I link to about FCE Report, they always say make up something to do with collecting data, make up something to do with statistics, make up something from where you get data from. And the idea of this is to make your report a lot more realistic, because reports are based on data, and also to give your report context. And that context is very, very useful when you're writing, because that context really communicates to the reader about what's going on. So even though you might make a few mistakes with word choice, even though you might make 1 or 2 mistakes with grammar, even though you might make 1 or 2 mistakes here or there, if the context is clear, then the reader will still understand what's going on. If the context is not clear and you're making mistakes, then you're going to make a real dog's dinner of the whole writing. So context is key. So you can say something like, I have collected data from my fellow students who use technology. I have spoken to teachers who use the technology and I understand what they think. You've got to say, I've got this set of data upon which my report is based. And here you've got perfect form. I have collected data. You can create the context for a perfect continuous form. I have been interviewing lots of people. I started a while ago until now, so perfect continuous. So we can start off this paragraph with the present simple. We can go on to perfect forms, perfect continuous forms. And so even in that first paragraph where we've got, I don't know, about 20, 30 words, we're going through ranges of grammar. If you wanted to use the passive form here, you could say data was collected from a number of different sources, and you can of course use active sentences and passive sentences, so you can further expand your range of grammar even in that first paragraph. So we've got the first section, how tech is used in our school. And if I scroll back up, this is include information about how technology is used to teach different subjects. So this header, as you can see just at the bottom of the screen, refers directly to the first bullet point. So we're always linking back to the text we have to use. And so I've said, let's just move that up a bit. The use of technology is widespread and appreciated. So let me just move that across because I can see I've chopped off some of the words. Still keep on going. Hang on a second. Over there we go. Okay. So what the idea of this is, it's a general comment. It's a general comment just to set the context of how technology is used in the school. And then I've got here examples of technology in lessons. Here we can use bullet points if we want to. There's not a problem with that. It lends itself. So we use technology in lessons here, 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 here. We can also use the past, the present, and the future. So we can create the context here. So we can say, in the past or last year, we tried this technology and it worked, it didn't work. Currently, we are doing something, something, something. We are planning to, or use a future form, we will be conducting, we will be using, we have plans to something, something, something. So we've got plenty of scope to go through the time phases here, which means different forms, which means showing off your grammar skills. So that's my the first part of the, or rather the first main part of the report. Then we've got this bit here, results of student data about technology. And this relates to recommending which lessons the teacher should watch to see technology being used. It's the first part of this discussion. So I've said, once again, another general comment, a wide choice to choose from. However, based on my data, these are the most popular. So once again, I'm referring to those statistics that I've mentioned in my introduction. So I've said that I've got this data. So in my report, I've got to refer to the fact that I've got this data. And that data says students said this, students said that, teachers said this, teachers said that. And then naturally I can have my list of lessons here and technology. So our students identified the 3 most popular forms of technology in these lessons, 1, 2, 3. Something along those lines. Teachers think ... You can see here, from my other videos where I go through other writing exercises, I always say if you can create a discussion, then it makes your sentences longer, more complicated, and it gets the reader's interest a little bit more. And here I've created a discussion. I've said I've made up the context that there is a wide choice to choose from. My school is like Silicon Valley in terms of the amount of technology it uses. However, so I've only, these are the most popular. So there's a discussion, there's a kind of contrast created there, which creates interest for the reader. So that's the thing there. Now, I've created my bullet points here, or my list here, or my lists here, depending if I want to talk about students and teachers in separate lists. And I did suggest creating lists possibly here. One piece of advice that comes from the websites, which are linked below, which talk about FCE reports, is that it says don't overdo lists. Don't go crazy for lists. We don't just want to see bullet points, because there's a number of different problems with that. First of all, it doesn't give you the chance to show off your grammar skills. And secondly, it's not very realistic. And thirdly, it's a bit of a cop-out. And the examiner knows that it's going to be a fairly weak answer just by looking at it if there are just millions of bullet points in your report. So be choosy, be selective about where you put your bullet points, because of course there might be the scope to include bullet points in the conclusions and recommendations. So you don't want to have bullet points here, 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 because it's a bit much. So just think carefully about where you use your bullet points, where you use your lists. And then we've got summary. There's lots of possibilities to observe technology in lessons in our school because it's a bit like Silicon Valley. However, my suggestion is I recommend proposing the list shown above, for example. So I link back to that data. Now here you need a clear expression of your recommendation. you have to express it clearly, just like you do in the other writing tasks. You have to say, this is what I think, in the appropriate context. And you've got to be that explicit, because that's what the examiner is looking for in your answer. Don't imply the message in a non-explicit way and just think, the examiner will know what I'm talking about. I can guarantee you now the examiner will not know what you're talking about, particularly if you haven't created the correct context. So just think about that. And so that's my structure, that's my plan. In the exam, I would expect to create something like this in less than 5 minutes, because I would have practiced it, because I've got lots of experience doing it. And as I was going through that, as you heard, we covered a lot of grammar, passive, active. We went through the tenses because we created the context to allow this to happen. You can use conditionals if you want, because you can talk about hypothetical situations. For example, in this paragraph, examples of how technology is used in lessons, you might reflect back and come up with a second conditional hypothetical. You might say, if we were to continue to do this, I think it would be even better. Something along those lines. So conditionals are very, very adaptable, very, very applicable, and if you think carefully and you practice, you can apply conditionals to nearly every single context. So that is the FCE report. So let's have a look at the CAE report. And this CAE question is the free online question that you can see on the link above my head or in the video description below. So this is the CAE report. It's question 4 on that webpage. Having now completed your first year in the new job, the manager has asked you to write a report on how the year went. You should mention something about the initial training, your colleagues, whether you feel you've done well and achieved your goals, and also some problems you encountered. Write your report. So let's break down the question. First of all, the manager has asked you to write a report. So we know straight away the register is going to be formal, because you're writing to your manager, you're writing to hierarchy. So it's formal writing. And you know you've got to, and this is the stuff that you should be underlining, you should talk about your initial training, you should talk about your colleagues, you should talk about your goals and if you've achieved them, and you should talk about problems. So there's 4 areas for you to cover. So straight away, you should be thinking of the structure of the CAE report and how we can apply those 4 areas within the report. And if we have a look at the structure that we're going for, then let's see how we can do that. So first of all, title, introduction, section 1, section 2, section 3 if it's needed, then summary and suggestion, or conclusions and recommendations, depending on what you want to call it. I've said here it's semi-formal. We're writing to our manager, so we can delete that. It's formal. We've got to use headings. We've got to use bullet lists and numbered lists, just as we have for the FCE. So why am I writing the report? Well, I'm writing the report because my manager's asked me to, because I've just finished my first year in a job. Okay, so you've got to find a way to paraphrase this without copying the question text to communicate the purpose of your report. Just like the FCE, it's good for you to create data. It's good for you to create data, some kind of statistics, some kind of numbers, some kind of data crunching or number crunching to provide context for what you're going to say in your report. Section 1, first idea in the task input. So you might think, okay, I'm going to do, because I've got 4 things to talk about, I'm going to put these 2 together. So initial training and colleagues. These 2 will go together. For section 2, I'm going to talk about whether I've achieved my goals and problems. That's one way to do it, so we don't need section 3, for example. But you might decide to break it up a different way, and you might think, okay, I'm going to have section 3, but not only am I going to have section 3, I'm going to have section 4 as well. Section 4. Now, the one possible issue that you've got with this is the amount of words that you've got to use. I think it's 220 to 260 for the CAE. If you're going to write the introduction, the section 1, 2, 3, 4, summary and suggestion, chances are you're going to blow your word limit. So think carefully about how you're going to manage the things you've got to talk about, and 4 is a lot of things to talk about, within the word limit that you've got. So this is what I've come up with. I think I've managed to squeeze just about everything in. I can see that I'm blocking some text with my grammar checklist, so let me just move that somewhere so it doesn't get in the way. Here we go. We'll come back to that in a second. Let's just pop it out of the way for the time being. Okay, so my title. Report summarising my first year in the job. Nice and simple, to the point, no messing around. Introduction. I was asked to write a report, talk about and what to talk about. Okay, so I've got the 4 things there. Here I've introduced where I've got my data, my statistics from. I've collected data from others, my fellow employees, for example, to see if my conclusions are shared, to see if people think the same thing as me. So I've created a context for the statistics to help me in my report. What I've done here is I've grouped everything up into 2 sections. The first heading is training and the team. So I've got training was effective, which is a positive, or I might decide to say it's unsuitable. So and what I would do here is I would create a discussion by comparing this with the statistics that I got from other people. So you might say something like, I think the training was effective, however, the statistics from my fellow employees showed that the training could be improved. Or so you create a contrast, and you do this purely for the purpose of showing off your English language skills. Then we've got the discussion about a sentence or 2 about the team. The team helped me to adapt, improve, get better, and then you might say in spite of the training. In other words, the training wasn't really good, but it's the team that helped me. Or you might say something else about the team. You can come up with a suggestion at this point. If the team were to, another second conditional, hypotheticals. So we can introduce a wide area of grammar there. Progress and problems, so that deals with the second 2 issues. There's no doubt I've made progress. There's no doubt I've made progress. A nice emphatic structure showing your opinion. Here's the discussion. However, I could have progressed more. Now, I could introduce a list at this point. I could say how I could progress more. I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have done this, and so on, so on. Problem I encountered. So problems I encountered also naturally lends itself to lists. So I could say, for example, number 1, no time for training. Number 2, few training spots. Let's just get rid of that bracket there. And then I might use those problems to see if they agree or disagree with my statistical analysis that I've done, which I mentioned in my introduction. So I'm constantly bringing the conversation back to my statistics as well as what I think. And I can create discussion there. I can do agreement, disagreement, disagreement, agreement, and so on, which then lends itself to linking words and so on. So this is really good, and why it's really important to create that discussion. Then conclusions and recommendations. Did I achieve my goals? Yes or no? My own personal conclusions. I feel that the first year was good, could have been better. I feel that the first year wasn't good enough. Statistical conclusions. My peers, my fellow employees think X, Y, Z. Could be another list. Do they agree with my personal conclusions? Do they not? Is there another discussion there? And then an explicit recommendation, in this case for better training. I strongly recommend ... whatever it might be. So I'm going explicitly saying what I have to do, which is what you have to do in the final part of the report. You have to conclude and you have to recommend. If I bring my grammar back in, we can see, let's move it up a bit. We can see that we can go through the context allows itself to talk about the past, the present, and the future. Past, the past year. I could even go past. I could go what the employee said about the training a couple of years before, and I could create a context that training has been improving over the last couple of years. So there I can squeeze in the perfect continuous. Present, how I feel now, what the situation is now. Future, what do I think about the future, what people think about the future. What does the statistics tell me about possible training in the future. And I can go through the whole range of the simple, the continuous, the perfect, and the perfect continuous in doing that. I can think of conditional structures for perhaps recommendations. If this were to happen, this might happen. I might talk about hypotheticals. I might create a context to use the third conditional based on what someone told me in my data, in my research. So if this person had this training, this person would be wherever. So there is context to create conditional structures. Relative pronouns, relative clauses, which, who, etc., etc. There's plenty of scope for that. Because this is a report, you have to include elements of the passive as well, and of course you can throw in some aspects of active. So there's plenty of scope to use that. There's plenty of scope to use emphatic structures, inversion, if you wanted to. Not only did this happen, but ... I no doubt made progress, etc., etc. So with a little bit of imagination and preparation and practice, you can use a very wide range of grammar. Now, of course, this is just how I would approach this question. This is the planning, this is the ideas that I created. Now, I'm not saying that these are the only ideas. I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm just saying this is what I thought of up against the clock. I put myself in the same situation as you guys, gave myself 5 minutes to create a plan, and this is what I've come up with. So don't think of what I'm saying as gospel. Think of it as advice about how you can prepare, how you can approach this, and how you can hopefully improve your writing skills. Okay, so having gone through all of that, this is what I would like you to do today. Of course, you can do the questions that we had a look at, the free online questions. You'll find the links to those in the video description below, but I'm afraid I won't be able to mark your answers. However, if you do one or more of these questions and you've joined up to CramTheExam, then I can mark your answers. You can send your writing to me. I will check it for you, mark it for you, and give you some constructive criticism to help you develop your writing skills. And if you don't know by now, and I'm sure you do, if you want to join my website CramTheExam.com, it costs 30 zlotys for 1 month's access, which is around about €7 to €8 if you're getting access from Euroland. If you want 3 months access, I can give you a course book. For Poland, that free of charge. For Poland, that will be 75 Zs, and you can buy the course book through my Allegro shop. There's a link in the video description below. If you're in Euroland, the price is just a tiny little bit more expensive because I've got to send it out to you. So it's 105 zlotys, which is around about 22 to 24 euros, which is still a whole lot cheaper than you can buy just the course book in your home countries. Go check out your eBay site, and I think you'll find that the course books go for around about 30 to 33 euros. Well, I can give you that for around about 22 to 24 and 3 months access. And if you want to check out what CramTheExam is like, then there's a link in the video description below where I log you into the website. I show you the resources that are there. I tell you a little bit about how the website works. So if you want, but if you've got any more questions, then please leave them in the comment section below. So one more time, these are the questions that I'd like you to do today. And as always, if you've got any comments, questions about any of the material that I've talked about in this video today, or about CramTheExam in general, please leave a comment below and I will get back to you. Okie dokie, tomorrow is Tuesday, which means it's a listening day. So I'll see you tomorrow with some more listening exercises.